20:10 is a clear reference to the punishment for adultery. It says there that if a man commits adultery with his neighbor's wife, both the male and the female should be put to death. Deuteronomy 22:22 says essentially the same thing, repeating it. And then 23 and 24, those verses, get a little bit more complicated. And it talks about a betrothed woman. And if a man, a neighbor, comes and lays with her, then they're both to be put to death. One, because he violated her, violated his neighbor's wife. And two, because she didn't shout out and they were in a city. And that his condemnation came for the violation, her came from not trying to stop it, not trying to get help. Which makes the next verse really interesting, for if it happens in an open field, and a man takes advantage of a betrothed woman, then he is to be put to death. But she is not, for she is not guilty, because her crime in that prior situation was not crying out for help. And crying out for help in an open field would serve no purpose. She's not guilty. These are the Old Testament regulations that the Pharisees and the scribes had in mind when they brought a woman caught in the very act of adultery to Jesus to ask what he thought should happen. She was caught in the very act of adultery. Where's the man? Why is it that the woman alone was brought? Especially since the emphasis in almost all of them lay with his action, what he did. And though she is held responsible as well. Where is the man? There is a real and clear sense that when the Pharisees and the scribes bring this woman to Jesus, they don't care about her crime. They don't care about her sin. They care about trapping Jesus. Because if he were to say, do what Moses says, that would be one thing. But if he were to say something about leniency or forgiveness, he would be denying Moses. But if he did say, do what Moses prescribed, then he would be putting a lie to all of those things he said about love and forgiveness. At least they would think so. So this had nothing to do with sin or crime. And this had everything to do with a pettiness and a meanness on the part of the Pharisees and the scribes. When they arrive, Jesus is seated, the woman is standing. And Jesus remains low. And he does that most interesting thing. He starts drawing figures in the dirt, in the sand in front of him, as they wait for his answer. I think perhaps the cleanest and easiest explanation of what he's doing, and there have been books written and great theories spun about what Jesus was doing. I think he was doodling. I think he was bored, perhaps a little angry, knowing what the game was. And he was just drawing. But we do know that Scripture is often used in stories of the New Testament. Old Testament references are there, and we can't dismiss out of hand that there was some purpose to the drawing, to the doodling. And we know in Jeremiah 17, verse 13, Jeremiah prophesies that those who turn away from the Lord shall be written in the earth. For they have forsaken the Lord, the fountain of living water. There are various translations, and some seem to try to make sense of what it means. Some say they have been written into the netherworld. They've been written into oblivion. And there is a sense that Jesus, squatting there, listening to them opine about what they think Moses would do, is simply saying, you have lost the source of life. You are dead. Interestingly, just before this passage in the Gospel of John, we have Jesus saying, whoever believes in me, as Scripture says, receives the living water, which will flow from within them. There is this sense that is easily found in the context that Jesus was simply coming to the realization and acknowledging that these so-called religious leaders, these men concerned about the purity of Israel, were dead. They had lost any hold on what God wanted of them. They had forfeited the gift. He, or the one among you, without sin, may cast the first stone. What Jesus has been telling the people of his day, what he tells you and me, is that each and every one of us, though perhaps not grave sinners, each and every one of us falls short of the mark. Each and every one of us is sinful. We're imperfect. We're human. And that just as we heard from the prophet Isaiah, he's coming to announce a new dispensation, a new way. And even though hundreds of years earlier, God had been saying, don't pay attention to all that I had done. I'm doing a new deed now. I'm bringing a new way of being. I'm trying to bring you ever more close to me. Jesus is this new deed. Jesus is one who is attempting to break down the hardness of the way of life of his day, and to say that God comes to save all people. He does not come to destroy. Has anyone condemned you? No, sir. No, Lord is the better translation. The only one to acknowledge Jesus as Lord in this story is the woman who experienced his compassion. Has anyone condemned you? No, Lord. No one has. And neither do I condemn you. I do not condemn you to death, but I invite you to life. I invite you to the fullness of the waters of refreshment. It's the same invitation he gives each and every one of us. It's the same one we took up on the day of our baptism, but we have to renew each and every day of our lives to accept the fullness of the life he offers us. We must walk away from undue harshness and judgment about the lives of others, whether it be sexual sin or any other behavior. But we, baptized into Christ, must be members of the new deed. We must witness to forgiveness and mercy. In its own way, it is just, for we have received them, and they are now